Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. I think it was something like 23 years ago that I first went to report from Kashmir. And in the years since then, when I look at what's been happening in Kashmir, I have to say I'm struck by a sense of some pain. Pain, of course, of the loss of lives that you continue to see, loss of lives among innocent civilians, loss of life among security forces, injuries among civilians, injuries among the security forces, the sense of alienation, a sense that so many things could have been perhaps done differently. And that perhaps is the reason why I think I feel the most amount of pain, is because there are so many lessons that we could have learned, there are so many lessons that we should have learned, and yet we don't learn those lessons. It's not learned by people in Delhi, it's not learned by people in Srinagar, it's not even learned by the civilians in Jammu and Kashmir. I think all sides, there are lessons that perhaps need to be learned from what happens in the past, but it doesn't happen, and so you go round and round, sometimes in circles. And this week again has been a really painful week. The killing of a terrorist, followed by massive protests, and then a number of injuries. And you've got to ask yourself, were those protests really necessary, and were those injuries really necessary, and the death of so many civilians, was that really necessary? So over the course of the next 1 hour or so, we will take a look at what's happened in this flare-up. We'll take a look at the broader picture of Jammu and Kashmir, but I am also going to ask all of our experts out here to turn their attention a little bit to some of the lessons that perhaps we should be trying to learn. And joining us now from Pune, Dilip Patgaonkar, one of the people who was a former interlocutor. He did try and put forward some of those lessons. Not all of them actually were accepted. Sujat Bukhari, the editor of Rising Kashmir, joining us from Srinagar. Somebody else perhaps in many suggestions for what can and should have been done differently all these years. Professor Hamidan Naeem is joining us, chairperson of the Kashmir Center for Social and Development Studies. Great to have you with us as well. Joining us here in the studio, Lieutenant General Raj Kadian, well-known defense analyst, Kamal Mitra Chenoy, professor of international studies at the JNU, Sambit Patra, actually the only real politician on the platform right now, and Praveen Swami, strategic affairs editor of the Indian Express here as well. And Praveen, you'll probably, what I was saying about 23 years ago will probably resonate with you, because you and I used to often meet in Kashmir in various, slightly dodgy hotel rooms, were the only ones that were open at that time. And there were so many things that we would often discuss and saying this is what needs to be done. And it's sometimes with a sense of shock that you realize that 23 years have passed and some of the most obvious lessons haven't yet been learned.
Absolutely, Vikram. I couldn't agree more. And what's doubly tragic is that over the last decade, the excuses that could have been there for not getting those things done no longer exist. When we started reporting on Kashmir, there was a vicious, violent insurgency that was claiming thousands of lives every year. The reality today is that...
And just to add to that, Praveen, it's what you make is an important point. It's worth noting that sometimes people say we are back to the 1990s. Actually, the situation right now is not even vaguely similar to what it was in the 1990s. It's much better now in one sense, and yet more radicalization now, and I'm going to talk about that.
It's much better. Violence levels have fallen to negligible levels compared to the 90s and even to a few years ago. Look at the chart from 2006, it's down. For all this fuss about, great numbers of Kashmiri youth joining terrorist groups, it's just not true. The numbers over the last 10 years, you've seen 40, 50 kids every year join. Most of them come back home after a short span of time. The numbers of terrorists active in the valley, according to the government's own numbers, falling every year. What we do see, though, is this large youth cohort that is completely alienated, disaffected from the government, disenfranchised by the political system, and a political system cutting across parties, both the National Conference and the PDP, that seem to be completely unable to reach out to young people and kickstart even a modicum of developmental or political engagement. And to me, that is the real tragedy.
Shujat, just wanted to get your take and your analysis of what's happening. And of course, this has been a really painful week. But if we step back and look at it from a slightly broader canvas, the point I think that Praveen was making is that, look, at one level you can say the actual number of militants or terrorists is down sharply. The number of violent incidents is actually down very sharply, certainly from the early 1990s, but even from a few years ago. But the levels of radicalization and the levels of alienation, radicalization perhaps higher than it has ever been, and alienation still very much there.
Yeah, Vikram, I think by and large what you said in your opening remarks and also Praveen has been saying that we have faltered in last so many years, essentially after 2008 when Mumbai derailed India-Pakistan peace process, and also the process which was on between New Delhi and Srinagar. If you recall the period from 2003 to 2008, we saw a discernible change as far as the political process is concerned, as far as the situation back in Kashmir is concerned, and the number of violent incidents went down, and infiltration also was drastically down, almost negligible. So there was a period when we saw a change in Kashmir where people of Kashmir wholeheartedly supported a process which was actually going on between New Delhi and Islamabad and also between New Delhi and Srinagar. People pinned hopes in that process, and out of that process you could see that there were initiatives taken of opening the road between Srinagar and Muzaffarabad, then the cross LOC trade and so many things. But after 2008, there is complete absence of political engagement and there's a vacuum, and to the extent that there is complete denial as far as New Delhi is concerned. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has repeated it so many times that he is going to follow the path of Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, following his expressions of Jamhuriyat, Insaniyat and Kashmiriyat. But in last 2 years, we have not seen that New Delhi has even moved an inch towards that direction. Okay. But only denial that it's a law and order problem, it's a strategic problem, it's a security concern, and I think that has actually contributed a lot to the situation where you could see 200,000 people attending funeral of a militant whom New Delhi calls terrorist, and people who were all coming from all the places
pretty
and
much
all
called himself
the
a
areas
militant
of
and a
Kashmir,
terrorist.
and now in the aftermath of that killing, we have unfortunately seen that nearly 40 people have lost their lives. So I think it is basically the,
right.
The
Shujat,
absence of a political engagement. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just trying to interrupt you to get Sambit in on this. Sambit, it also seems sometimes when you're studying what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir, views seem to have become far more hardened on all sides. If you're looking at social media, if you're looking at certain Indian television channels, which are beaming out nationally, you will get a sense that, it's just all of these guys should be shot, they should be bombed, something should be done. There's that one extreme view. From within the valley, an equally extreme view, this is genocide that is taking place. There are innocent people who are just being shot in cold blood. Actually, a lot of people were injured and were also attacking police posts, which is something that has to be kept in mind. So, two very entrenched views seem to be coming up, which means any sort of attempts to try and say the reality is somewhere in between is often lost.
As the Prime Minister and as the Chief Minister in Jammu and Kashmir has called for peace, I would also make a call for peace, and thereafter I would answer your question. The 2 points that have been brought up in the debate over here, one by Praveen, the word is alienation, and other Mr. Modi's diplomacy has been brought by Sujat. I'll answer both of them. First, coming to alienation. I have a set of statistics in front of me, which is extremely important. It was in the print media day before yesterday. Since 1990s, these are the these were the items which were recovered from Kashmir. Militants killed 24,000, sophisticated weapons seized 45,000.
Samit, I'm going to interrupt you because it's partly off the point. We agree with you. Terrorism is down. Terrorism is down. Violence down. We started by saying this.
I'll tell you as to why this is on the point, and you'll have my point very soon. AK series assault rifles 34,000, sniffer rifles 461, grenade launchers 5,123, rocket launchers 3,000, high explosive 12,900 kgs, grenades 1 lakh, rounds of ammunition 54 lakhs.
There was a war-like situation that time being fanned by the neighbors. There's no comparison.
And what I meant to say was, when you have these kind of stockpile, when you have this kind of ammunition, it is not because of alienation, it is because you're preparing for a war. It is not because some people are not employed that they would stock such amount of ammunition in their home. Second important question that Mr. Sujat raised about Kashmiriyat, Insaniyat and Jamhuriyat. Now tell me, if a militant was to be killed, is it not Jamhuriyat? In a democracy, are militants to be pardoned? Killed in encounter. The army tried to capture him. There was an encounter, and he was killed. So, is this not Jamhuriyat? Is this not Kashmiriyat?
Are you somewhat sad or disturbed by the fact that your own partner there is now asking for an inquiry? Doesn't that
My partner is not asking for inquiry.
They have?
No.
They've said we should inquire.
I heard Mehbooba Mufti, the Chief Minister of
Muzaffar
Jammu
Beg
Kashmir.
has said there should be.
Muzaffar Beg is not the Chief Minister. I go by the official
Naeem
stand of the
Akhtar?
whoever, but the official stance, sir, is that of the Chief Minister, which was declared day before yesterday. She has called for peace and she has not asked for an inquiry. So naturally, I would rather, maturity calls that we rather avoid isolated stray comments and go for the comment that has been made by the Chief Minister and the Prime Minister. Why provoke?
I mean, are you trying to say that there is no alienation right now among the
No,
people?
I have given you statistics. If you have 54 lakh round of ammunition, alienation would not have 54 lakh round of ammunition. If I'm unemployed, and
So you're saying there is no alienation, it's just a
I'll tell you,
Pakistani plot.
it is misplaced priorities.
Vikram, I just wanted to actually make a point that we are not discussing that why Burhan Wani was killed in an encounter, because Burhan had chosen a path. Obviously, I think encounter had to take place, or he had to live for more life. We are not discussing that. As you rightly pointed out, we have seen much more number of arms and ammunition in Kashmir before that. As you began by saying that you have covered Kashmir from right from 1990. I mean, this is no ammunition and arms for that matter. But question is that, can Dr. Sambit Patra answer this question? Why 2 lakh people were there? They were not carrying arms.
I want to.
I mean, why 2 lakh people were there? Don't you think that is alienation? And why you have to put curfew? Why you have to lock down Kashmir for 6-7 days? I mean, if everything is hunky dory, if people of Kashmir have no problems, if people of Kashmir are not alienated, if they don't have any political aspiration, then why problem? Why you have to impose curfew?
10 seconds to answer that. Well, by the logic that since there were approximately 1 lakh or 35,000 people attending the funeral of Wani, that means alienation. By the same logic, I would sell that because people from Mumbai attended the funeral of Yaqub Memon, does that mean that Muslims of Mumbai were alienated? Absolutely no. There were 50,000 people attending the funeral of Yaqub Memon as well.
Dr. Patra, there is no comparison between Bombay
that there is alienation?
This is absolutely wrong that there is no comparison
there
between
is
Bombay and
I mean,
Kashmir. Both were funerals.
No, there is
Both
no
were funerals of
comparison.
militants and terrorists.
We are discussing an entirely
The Muslims were angry
different
with. Why should
situation.
Muslims be angry about Yaqub Memon?
I don't think you can draw a parallel.
They were angry with the court. Look at the statement. Muslims were
can't
angry with
draw-
the
no, you
Supreme
can't
Court.
draw
Why should
parallels.
so
I mean,
Supreme Court
you-
should not
no,
punish
no,
Muslims?
see, Yaqub-
What is this statement?
Political people cannot have positions. Sorry, that is not a democratic statement.
This is not a democratic statement.
Democracy allows you to take a position on anything
Not at
which
all.
is
Your
important
statement
to the
that
people.
Muslims were annoyed with Supreme Court
Vikram,
because Yaqub
let's
Memon
not get
was
diverted
angry.
into Yaqub Memon.
Yaqub Menon's story is since over.
A militant is a militant is a militant.
Of course, a
stories
militant-
may be different.
No,
but
no,
the end
no,
result is
nobody.
same.
No, I didn't say that.
I don't think
militant
he
is not
killed,
a
he
militant.
killed, both
Militant
killed.
is a militant.
Right.
Yeah, okay, there's no problem, but
But
he's
I'm
a
trying to-
competent, he was killed, but I am saying that let us try to ponder over this fact, which we have been trying to ignore for long time, that why 2 lakh people would come into the funeral of a militant. Just try to understand that means there's a
No, I'm
problem.
not
Actually,
able to
hang on,
understand
more
as to
to the
why.
point. More
And
to
the
the point.
army
Sambit.
said there were only 7,000 people at the funeral.
No, I'm not
Let's
able
come
to
out in the
understand.
press.
See,
Okay,
can
let
anyone
there
answer
be
me?
5,000 only, that also is a problem.
No, I am not able to understand as to why ISIS should be there. I don't understand as to why there should be this Nice attack in France. I'm not able to understand. Let me tell you very frankly, when people are living happily everywhere, is there alienation in France? Is there alienation in America? No, but there are terrorism attacks there as well. So by this justification, the 2 lakh people were there, and a funeral of
those are isolated incidents.
funeral of Wani was different from funeral of Yaqub Memon is absolutely wrong.
I think actually we're all missing the point. Yes, there can be terrorism and there can be attacks in a place where there is no alienation. But to say that by and large in Jammu and Kashmir there is only a small law and order problem in 1 or 2 pockets, otherwise there is no alienation. The reason there's a problem with that is because then, and that's exactly what has often happened, we take no efforts by and large to try and solve other issues because we tell ourselves there is absolutely no problem. So we shouldn't be in denial. I'm not saying that everyone in Kashmir feels in a certain way. I'm not saying, but I'm
no
saying
one is in denial with the problem of Jammu Kashmir. 1,000 crore as a package to Jammu Kashmir. Golden Heart for the floods. We all stood by Jammu Kashmir. We should stand. They are our own brothers and sisters. That's our part, our country. So naturally, why should we be thinking that we are alienating
Dilip
Jammu
Padgaonkar,
Kashmir?
do you think there are lots of simple things that could have been done in the last decade some of which you also referred to when you were an interlocutor, which just haven't been done.
You know, Vikram, I first of all want to endorse what you said right in the beginning of this program, namely that many respects, the more things change in Kashmir, the more, alas, they remain the same. And you know, whether it is Delhi or Srinagar or elsewhere, I think we seem to be like the Bourbons of France. We neither seem to learn anything nor forget anything about the past. Let me be specific in two respects. One, the situation in Kashmir has always been complex in the sense that there has been a disconnect between the state and the citizenry for a very long time, and I'm not going to go back into history. But the fact is that if you look back at the manner in which one responded to incidents in 2008, 9, 10, you'd notice that there is a certain pattern which seems not to have changed. You know, in the report that we submitted to the government, the very first thing we said was precisely that there are mass protests, and you should know how to handle these mass protests so long as they don't turn violent. Then you need to be extremely judicious in the way you use force. We said this on the basis of the discussions we had with top police and CRPF officers, and we concluded that, you see, they weren't either trained well enough or even equipped well enough to face such crowds.
Dilip,
Things did change a little bit after that.
I'm just going to take your point forward a little bit by showing everyone a series of pictures, and then, Jan Kanyad, I'm going to come to you. So, too much force is used. Lots of innocents have got killed. Lots of them have got injured, and there's been a lot of talk about it. And people say that the security forces should have exercised a lot more restraint. Now, that's very easy for people to say, but I think we have to also try and fix where culpability is. Now, take a look at these pictures. This is the sort of equipment that the Jammu and Kashmir police has and the CRPF has. This is what they are using. They've got those cane shields. They've got, in some cases, some body vests that may or may not provide them a certain measure of protection. Most of them are not wearing helmets of any sort, and they're confronting people who are throwing stones at them. They're confronting people who came in to attack and try and burn down police stations. That's what they're confronting out there. And then you get surprised if they open fire. They get surprised when they fire, pellets. It's also our fault for not having taken any effort in all these years to provide them with proper equipment and proper protection. General Kalyan, let me turn to you. If those same men were given the basic minimum of equipment that I think every expert has been talking about, not now but for the last 20 years, maybe they would be less eager, less willing, less ready to open fire because they feel a little safer.
Vikram, first of all, let me give you a little historical perspective on alienation. My first visit to the valley was in 1963, when I think most of these people were not born. If I drove my jeep through a village, if the children saw me, they would run away shouting, "Kafir aa gaye." It was in their blood right from that time. That time there was no violence. There was not much interference from Pakistan's side. So alienation is not grown overnight. Yes. Maybe there have been ups and downs. Now, when you talked about the security forces, it is always easier. I am not defending anybody not equipping the police properly. Always easier to analyze an issue after the event has taken place. None of us ever pointed out, after all, what is the job of a local police?
We've been pointing out poor equipment for 22 years. 22 years. I mean, I personally done it. He's done it for 22 years. I'm sure others have too.
I'm not defending eyesight. CRPF, there is no reason why they are not better equipped. But the police, the role of the police is to intervene into local disputes, thefts, robberies, disputes between neighbors. This kind of outburst was not foreseen. That is where we are seeing the problem.
So why was that wait, hang on, wait, just pause for a minute there. Why was it not foreseen? You've seen violent incidents taking place in Jammu and Kashmir since 1990, off and on, up and down. 2010, you had stone pelting. Okay, if not before that, 2010, a bell should have rung saying maybe they're going to be stone pelting mobs and we should have proper equipment to tackle them. It's 2016 now. Nobody could have foreseen that there may be stone pelting mobs in Jammu and Kashmir.
Should have been foreseen. I am not saying. I am saying it was. this kind of emotional outburst that
Vikram,
came
may I
out
just-
of.
May I just
There's
interrupt?
stone
Vikram,
pelting
One
mobs
is
every
death,
single
one is death.
Vikram,
year,
in
every month.
2011, no less than the Prime Minister of India, then Prime Minister of India, did foresee it. He stood in front of the Directors General of Police in this country at the annual DGP's conference and said, we will do this. Non-lethal policing is something that is really important. You'll recall the previous year, far greater casualties, 110 people
120.
killed, 117 I think. Anyway, many hundreds of people, maybe over 1,000 badly injured. He said, we're going to do this. The CRPF was supposed to have at least 3 battalions of the RAF equipped on a priority basis with modern riot control equipment. The Jammu and Kashmir police were supposed to be properly equipped. Various states in the union were supposed to do this. It is now 2016, 5 years. I don't want to say, this government, that government, but whoever it was, nothing has happened.
Okay.
What is more? What is more? It is not simply a question of equipment. The pellet guns the Jammu and Kashmir police are using today are far less lethal on paper than a Kalashnikov, which is their standard issue rifle. But it's not an easy weapon to use and train. Pellet scatters everywhere. It's got to be used as it is by riot control forces everywhere after a lot of regular training and discipline. Riot control forces train for weeks abroad every single year. It's not something that you just give a guy a gun and say, go forth and control a mob. There is specialist ammunition which specialists in ballistics work on after lots and lots and lots of evaluation. Nothing's done over here. And frankly, for every injured person there, the then Prime Minister of India, who promised in 2011 before this country that this would be done and didn't do it, is culpable.